Hello, and welcome to the Motor Trade Radio podcast, powered by Cazoo, with Philip Nothard and Curtis Hutchinson, bringing you all the chatter that matters across the car retailing sector, from factory to forecourt.
Oh, it's quite funny, Curtis. Me and David last week talked about you bringing the sun back with you. With the thought that you're going abroad, but you actually aren't going abroad, so you're actually not taking the weather with you or brought any weather back with you, did you?
No, and found some really good weather down in Devon last week. So, many thanks to David for sitting in for me. I did enjoy the show. It was great to listen to. And it's always good to hear David's take on what's happening in the industry, especially the used car sector, which, he's so close to. And I must say, I did enjoy the tagline that you used, which was pump pain, payout pauses, and profit peaks. So a nice bit of alliteration there whilst I was away.
Yes. I don't expect it too often, though, Curtis. That
Well, you've set the bar high. I'm going to have to come up with something this week.
Somebody set the bar high, should I say? I won't say any more than that.
Was this Claude? Was this your AI friend? Yes.
Somebody in that cloud ether, should we say?
You've been rumbled.
Yes, as everybody is. But no, I mean, thank you to David. I've always got a lot of time for David, both personally and obviously from his insight into the sector. And it was a great conversation. And obviously we covered some of the headlines that week, but also it was a good chance to have a conversation from somebody that is really at the front of what's happening at that front end. So huge thank you, and he's a great supporter of the podcast as well, isn't he? So huge thank you, David, for stepping in whilst Curtis is away. And I'm sure there'll be a couple of other opportunities for the rest of the year as well on that. But we must also reference 2 press releases that we've had sent into us as well, which is great.
Yeah, the first one was from Laura Coe's friend of the pods and an old colleague of mine. She looks after the Automotive Leadership Network, and she sent us a press release announcing that Nicole Melillo Shaw, who's the managing director of Volvo in the UK, has joined the ALN as one of its vice presidents. And she's actually taken over from Dale Wyatt, who retired as director of Suzuki. So, there's a really, really good appointment there. And, she'll be working alongside other senior industry stalwarts, including Virtue's Robert Forrester, Perry's Darren Arden, and Mazda's Laura Brayley. So that'd be interesting to see what develops there, and what a great person to have on the team there.
Yeah, and as you say there, I mean, Nicola's, she'll help guide the strategic direction for the ALN and to support its mission of bringing together leaders from across the automotive ecosystem to address key challenges, share insights, and shape the future of the sector. And I've met and I've had the pleasure of being in the audience a few times with Nicole, and she's very, very good and very focused and very knowledgeable in her sector. So I think she'll be a fantastic addition to the ALN and the team there.
Yeah, and many thanks to Matt Shannon from Swansway for giving us an exclusive on the group's views on why customer education is vital to EV transition. And we really are grateful to people like Matt and Laura who send us press releases. So if you do want any press releases covered, especially if they're exclusives, we do like exclusives on the podcast, do send them to myself or Philip.
Yeah, and as you say, I mean, Matt sent in the press release, which is obviously from Swansway, that the family-owned dealer calls for greater EV education as industry debates pace of the transition, which we will get onto that because we've got a couple of stories that are covering that, and they are highlighting that the findings that came despite strong growth in EV adoption at Swansway, where annual retail EV sales have increased by more than 560% since 2020, rising to 403 vehicles to 2,670 vehicles in 2025 as motorists do that transition. But they are obviously calling on the government to do more in this transition, particularly around that education around EVs as well.
If you're a supplier and would like us to profile your business and reach our audience of dealer group bosses, managers and decision makers on one of our Motor Trade Radio supplier special episodes, then get in touch at motortraderadio@yahoo.com.
And some of the many companies featured in our supplier specials include Autoglim, Lifeshine, Impel, Prospecting Dynamics, and MTC. You can find them all in your podcast feed, along with some of our recent OEM specials with new EV brands, Verizon, Ion, and Shangan, as well as dealer favourite Suzuki. So if you'd like us to profile your business or send us a press release, then just message us at motortraderadio@yahoo.com.
You're listening to the Motor Trade Radio podcast, powered by Cazoo.
Well, plenty of headlines this week, as ever, and this week they're from the Sunday Times, BBC News, AM Car Dealer, Motor Trader, and Motor Trade News. In the first half of this week's pod, we'll be looking at reports that the government is considering watering down the ZEV mandate. The story broke last weekend with a Sunday Times exclusive, which delighted many in the industry, as witnessed by the number of posts that I saw on LinkedIn last Sunday. And it was followed up during the week by BBC News and the trade press. So we'll have a roundup of what was reported, what we currently know, and the industry's reaction. And rounding up the EV debate, we'll have a look at that exclusive from Swansway on the role of customer education rather than push in EV transition. Then in the second half, we've got the latest sales figures from the Finance and Leasing Association showing a positive start to Q2. We'll also look at research reported by Motor Trade News showing how most car buyers still prefer visiting and buying from dealerships rather than purchasing online. And we'll wrap up this week with AM's report on how TrustFord has run into hot water over a Motability ad campaign ahead of next month's changes to the scheme.
You're listening to the Motor Trade Radio podcast, powered by Cazoo.
So as Curtis said there, we're going to head over to the Times, and this is as Keir Starmer overrules Ed Miliband on electric car sales targets, saying that the Prime Minister wants to water down the net zero policy after pressure from business and the Unite Union, over job losses. So kind of getting into politics here, aren't we, Curtis? But I think this is welcomed, but obviously it's quite complex and comes at a very interesting time in the political environment with Number 10, doesn't it?
Yeah, it does. And this was very much an exclusive that the Sunday Times reported on. And it does show some of the differences that we're seeing in government at high level within government. And also some of the successes of lobbying against the ZEV mandate from the industry. So it remains to be seen what will happen. But certainly within the Sunday Times piece, it says that any change will be subject to a consultation and require the backing of devolved administrations for it to be rolled out nationwide. So that potentially puts Westminster on a collision course with Holyrood and the Senate. So again, remains to be seen how that one plays out. But the move, I mean, it would mark a U-turn over a key part of the green agenda. I mean, certainly promoted by Ed Miliband, who has faced growing pressure in recent months to soften his stance on subjects such as oil and gas drilling to help boost the economy. And within the piece that the Sunday Times reported on, they quote Sharon Graham, who's the General Secretary of Unite, which of course is one of Labour's biggest donors. And she said the ZEV mandate is significantly contributing to the loss of automotive jobs in Britain. This is a clear fact. The targets must be radically reduced. And she went on to warn that if the government sits on its hands, it will be responsible for the decimation of the automotive industry. So some pretty hard-hitting words there from Unite.
And pretty clear words as well, isn't it? Yeah. I think that's the key, and obviously, there's, and we'll get onto those shortly. But the sector has been calling for a revision, and obviously, the government did respond saying it's 2027 when they're looking at that consultation. But it looks like that pressure is rising. And as we're recording this week, they are set to meet this week, aren't they? And sort of talk about what that decision may be in terms of that watering down, if there is a watering down to the current thresholds for the ZEV mandate out to sort of 2030 and then 2035. And as we know, that's basically looking at 2030 as the full, purely powered by petrol and diesel to be gone, and then obviously you go into that hybrid for the next 5 years as well. So yeah, there's a lot to come from this one, isn't there?
There is, yes. And so that was the report on Sunday. It was rapidly followed on Monday by BBC News, who reported that the government will hold a consultation on what the new 2030 target should be, meaning it could take months before it's decided. But the numbers they're talking about, so it's set at 80% at the moment, isn't it, for 2030? And the numbers that have been kicked around at the moment range from 50% to 70% under consideration. So as we record this, we haven't heard how that consultation is going, and whether we hear this week or over the coming weeks remains to be seen.
Yeah, but it is in the BBC story. They cover that, but they also start to talk about that range anxiety and charging points, saying that to sell their quota of EVs, many car manufacturers use discounts, as we've talked about many times on the podcast, and this has cost the industry more than 10 billion over the past 2 years, and that's according to obviously my cause there at the SMMT. But it is coming under a little bit of challenge in there, isn't it? That they talk about that. Is it the UKSIF? Quite a long acronym there, Curtis. Is the UK Sustainable Investment and Finance Association's Chief Executive James Alexander said that the watering down of the ZEV mandate could slow the rollout of more charging points in the UK, and goes on to say that the mandate is vital for driving investment into our charging infrastructure, as it has given the market confidence to commit vast sums of private capital to building out these networks across the country. So again, I think the risk with this, and I think it'd be welcomed obviously with the watering down of the ZEV mandate, particularly those thresholds, but at the same time, it's just yet another change into it, which makes forecasting and investment very challenging.
Yeah, and you know what? So I was in Devon last week and did stop off at Exeter Services, and every time I go to Exeter Services, which is probably every 6 months, there's a whole new bank of charging points there. And in fact, there was work going on at the moment to put in even more charging points. But there are now probably more charging points than there are parking spaces, and they were significantly underutilized. So I'm not sure that the slowdown in the rollout of charging points is such an issue as it was 18 months, 2 years ago. I think we're getting to that sort of critical point where charging points are available and can be found relatively easily no matter where you are.
No, I think you're right. I mean, the whole infrastructure and education and knowledge around the sector has improved. It's just questionable whether it's moving at the same pace of the ZEV mandate, which is where nobody's challenging the ZEV mandate in terms of its intention. I think
Yeah.
it's just the speed of that threshold that is making it quite difficult, alongside the other geopolitical and economic climate that we find ourselves in, which leads very nicely into the next story. And a friend of the podcast, which is in car dealer, that Virtue backs reported ZEV mandate rethink as industry splits of EV targets, saying that the industry splits over reports of ZEV mandate. Virtue chief welcomes move, whilst others brand it short-termist. Reports emerged over the weekend. This is last weekend that Keir Starmer, obviously, we were just talking about earlier, was intervening in the mandate discussions. But the 2030 target of 80% EV could be slashed to 50% there. So, again, Robert's coming at it from a totally different angle. He's obviously thinking from a business perspective and a profitability perspective, and what's happening there.
Yeah, Robert was quick out of the blocks, and in the piece that Car Dealer reported on, he's quoted as saying that Virtue sells and believes in electric cars, but the rules forcing public to buy them are too harsh and need reform, which is something that Robert's spoken to us about on the podcast a number of times. So not against the principle, but the way it's actually being applied and enforced. And he goes on to say, if true, this change in government policy is positive news because petrol and diesel cars are likely to be rationed in the years leading up to 2030 because unachievable electric targets are being set before the public is ready. And Robert suggested that the UK risks putting itself out of step with other major markets if the current targets remain unchanged.
Yeah, and that kind of just finishing off this first half today, that we touched on the story earlier that Matt had sent us from Swansway, and that title that we mentioned around family owner dealer calls for greater EV education as industry debates pace of transition. But similar kind of story coming out from Peter Smythe and the Swansway business there into around this, this challenge around this transition that, yes, the transition is moving in the right direction and there is an adoption of EVs, but is it moving too quickly? Is the thresholds too harsh, too quickly, too soon?
Yeah, definitely. And this release issued by Swansway was in response to a report that was conducted by quotezone.co.uk and was picked up in the press last week by Motor Trade News. And they did some research which found that 2/3 of UK drivers have no plans to switch to an EV. So again, it's really looking at the push and pull dynamics of the market. So 2/3 of UK drivers have no plans to switch to an EV, whilst government legislation is really pushing the market to go to transition to EVs before 2030, where petrol and diesel sales will close, unless, of course, that's changed. But within the piece, Peter Smythe, director at Swansway, said, research like this demonstrates that there is still a significant education piece for the automotive industry when it comes to electric vehicles. Having supplied thousands of EVs to retail customers, we've seen many drivers remain unsure about charging, range, and the realities of day-to-day ownership. And he goes on to say that in many cases, those concerns begin to disappear once customers can experience the technology for themselves. So really highlighting the role that dealers have in that conversation.
And Peter being Peter, and he does finish off that, and just before we go to the break, that he says that the industry's role isn't to persuade every motorist to switch overnight. It's about providing clear, honest information that helps customers understand all of the options available to them and make the right choice for their individual circumstances. While the transition to 2035 remains a significant challenge, consumer confidence will ultimately play a major role in determining how quickly adoption grows. So, nice little conclusion there to the coverage of them ZEV mandate changes.
We'll be back with the rest of the week's headlines after the break.
You're listening to All the Chatter That Matters on the Motor Trade Radio podcast, powered by Cazoo.
So next up is the latest figures from the Finance and Leasing Association, who monitor finance sales to consumers through the industry. And there's always a bit of a lag in the reporting. So the most up-to-date figures that they released over the course of the week are for April, and it was picked up by Motor Trader, and we've actually got the press release here as well, which is more detailed. So we'll put a link to the press release in the newsletter that goes out on Monday, but it shows that new figures that were released during the week show that consumer car finance new business volumes actually grew by 3% in April compared with the same month in 2025. And it goes on to say that the corresponding value of new business was 9% higher than the same period. And in the first 4 months of 2026, new business volumes grew by 4% compared with the same period in 2025. And looking specifically at new car finance, the report shows that new business was up by 25% by value and 21% by volume in April. So it's very encouraging. This encouraging figures for April, and hopefully setting the scene for Q2. But in the first 4 months of 2026, new business volumes in the market were 16% higher than in the same period last year. And
it kind of does reflect the conversation we had with Danny and Ash, wasn't it, from Greenhouse, and the SMMT figures that we've seen for the year to date. That we're seeing that growth of new car volume, but I don't know whether it's connected here. But the used figures seem to have fallen slightly, which reflects what Danny and Ash were saying, where they have seen that used car erosion from used into new, haven't they, in the year-to-date figures for them.
Yeah. So in terms of used car, the market, the value of new business was 2% lower in April compared to last year, while new business volumes fell by 3%. So in the first 4 months of this year, new business volumes in the used car market were 2% lower than in the same period in 2025. So really sort of backing up what Greenhouse were telling us on our special pods from just a couple of weeks ago.
Yeah, and there is comments in the story here that I said, as Curtis said, we will share with you, that comments from the FLA, the chief economist there, saying that the consumer car finance market made a positive start to the second quarter of 2026, driven strongly through the growth of new car finance. In the near term, the backdrop remains challenging, with the cost pressures, weak confidence, and higher interest rates weighing on activity. However, the recent US-Iran agreement marks an important turning point, offering greater stability in energy markets and improving the medium-term outlook for growth and inflation. So, I think a little bit of a positive note there from the FLA in terms of that medium-term outlook, rather than that short-term outlook of the challenges that we've got in the sector there.
And moving on to Motor Trade News, the headline is most car buyers still prefer dealerships over online purchasing, Cazoo finds. So this is from the latest Cazoo Consumer Insight Panel research, which surveyed just over 2,000 car buying decision makers, and it found that 72% want to see, test drive and buy a vehicle at a dealership. And that figure has remained largely unchanged across the last three consumer surveys that it's done, the Consumer Insight Panel surveys. And I actually helped the guys at Cazoo with this particular report, so I did see the data and some fascinating insights. So it goes on to say that the proportion of buyers who want to view and test drive a vehicle at a dealership before completing the purchase online has risen slightly from 19% in 2022 to 21%. However, the number of buyers who want to complete the entire process online has fallen from 11% to 8% over the same period. So we are seeing a drop in that online only activity, which Phil, we were podcasting during the lockdowns, and we saw a lot of these online services being launched. But it does look as though the market has gone back. Consumers have gone back to what they were comfortable with before COVID.
Yeah, and we were talking about AI, artificial intelligence earlier, but there is saying that the research suggests buyers continue to favour human interaction over AI. When contacting retailers, more than half, 53%, said they would rather speak to a real person than an AI-powered phone assistant. Also, that's some of our podcast special, supplier special, should we, Curtis? Although this fell to 42% amongst responders who had previously interacted with an AI assistant. And there's a little quote in here from Lucy Tugby there at Cazoo saying that the use of AI assistants is becoming more widespread across many different sectors, including car retailing. While some car buyers have expressed reservations about using them, acceptance will ultimately be driven by trial, experience, and improving AI tech. And until then, dealers need to carefully manage how they deploy AI assistants and not to underestimate the power of a positive interactions with real people. Nice little sign off there from Lucy on that story.
Yes, and Phil, you're very much the kiddie on AI. As anyone who would have seen any of our recent promos on LinkedIn for the podcast, with yourself in AI mode. So I never know if I'm talking to the real Philip Nothard or the AI generated Philip Nothard.
I'll keep that secret to myself. Whether is it me or is it not me? Who knows?
It's got the accent, which is the worrying thing.
Yes, yeah, I think it's got that Yorkshire Lancashire tone to it.
Yeah,
it even picks up my rolling R's as well, Curtis, as well. It does quite well, but we'll move on. So the final story today is AM online, and it's an interesting one. This one because it's TrustFord criticised over Beat the Changes Motability campaign. And this is that TrustFord is facing criticism over an ad campaign urging eligible customers to order Motability vehicles before changes to the scheme take effect on the 1st of July. And this is changes to do with the VAT/IPT taxes on the deposit and the insurance on the Motability scheme. But it's a bit of an odd one, this one, isn't it, in the way they've kind of jumped on Ford via TrustFord on this one, hasn't it?
Yeah, AM's coverage is absolutely spot on, and they picked it up from a rather sniffy, it has to be said, a rather sniffy story in the Daily Telegraph, and the headline at the Telegraph was Ford urges benefits claimants to beat Motability crackdown. So, really highlighting Telegraph's view on benefits claimants. So, but the AM story does highlight that this is a marketing exercise by TrustFord. It's not Ford, it's TrustFord, the dealer group, and they're just telling their customers and prospective customers that if you want to get in ahead of the changes, then you've only got limited time because the changes come into force on the 1st of July. So they've been backing this up with advertising, marketing, and reaching that audience. accidents. So I don't see anything wrong with this, do you?
No, not at all. I think it benefits everybody. I think with this one,
Yeah.
I mean, I think one, it benefits the Motability scheme itself, because this does come at a cost to them, to satisfy this improvement or this increase in taxation. It satisfies the consumer because they pay less in terms of their deposit contribution as well, because they'll save on that through the IPC taxes, VAT on that one. So I think it's no different than what we've done in terms of the luxury car tax and other increases that we've come towards the sector. I think it's as you say, that Daily Mail picking on it, that it's Ford that are doing it. It isn't. It's the retailer that is doing it. And why wouldn't you? I mean, if it encourages those customers and that are considering changing or entering the Motability scheme, then do it now before the 1st of July if you are going to do it. I don't think there's anything wrong with that. I think if anybody's today not got a Motability allowance, then they're going to try and be able to get it before the 1st of July. So you're only attracting people that are already eligible to the scheme anyway, aren't you? It's just encouraging them to change their vehicle now or enter the scheme using their eligibility scheme now. So I don't think there's anything wrong with this. I think it's a good move. And like I say, I think the Motability do come under criticism quite a lot from these kind of things, don't they, unfortunately?
Yeah, it is very much a smart marketing campaign, which I'm sure other dealer groups are kind of kicking themselves for not also embracing, because the clock is ticking now.
So that's it for this week. So I say, there may be some changes by the time we get to you listening to this on Saturday morning, or whenever you do listen to this week's headline podcast, to the ZEV Mandate, depending on when Keir Starmer and the government announce any watering down, if any, to the thresholds of the ZEV Mandate. As always, we will cover all these headlines and the links on the Monday morning newsletter, but I won't be on next Saturday, will I, Curtis?
No, it's your turn to go on holiday, isn't it?
Yes, and I'm not going abroad either, so I'll be taking no weather with me and bringing no weather back with me.
Will you be taking your laptop with you, though?
I'll be online a little bit,
Yes, you can't stop yourself, can you?
I can't, no. Unless what I could have done, I could have thrown my AI bot with you next week, Curtis. That would have been an interesting one.
Well, I mean, that's a work in progress. Let's look at that, yeah.
But that's it for this week, isn't it? We've hopefully covered some of the big headlines. It's great to have you back, Curtis. And thank you, David, for last week, as always. And I think you'll announce who you're having next week, won't you?
I will indeed, yeah. And that is all for now. So many thanks to you for listening to this Motor Trade Radio podcast. I'm back next weekend. So until then, it's goodbye from me.
And it's goodbye from him.
Thank you for listening to the Motor Trade Radio podcast, powered by Cazoo.